Welcome, everyone. Give everyone a few minutes to log in. I'm going to repost this, so give me a sec. And thank you, everyone, for joining us. Sorry, we started a minute or two late. We had a little technical difficulties, and we're going to try to figure that out. I want to just put this out there right now. If there is any audio issues, if you guys are getting any audio feedback, please let me know so that we can kind of play with the audio and try to fix what we can. So leave it in the comments. I'll see it, and then we can move forward from there. Anyways, good evening, everyone. Welcome. If you're tuning in for the first time, this is the La Maison de Rouge Monday night weekly live broadcast. I am your host, Lucy Sweetkill, one half of the duo that is La Maison de Rouge. A little bit about who we are. LMDR is dedicated to expanding the BDSM experience by discussing, educating, and informing our audiences about the intersections of kink, wellness, sexuality, spirituality, and social activism. We aim to create a safe space for discussing these topics, as well as providing an avenue for our guests to share their stories and experience. Thank you again for joining us. Tonight, our guest is NYC-based Pro-Dominatrix with a sensual and sadistic edge. She's been in the BDSM and kink community for 5 years and recently just passed her 1-year anniversary as a Pro-Dominatrix. She loves the combination of chastity, cuckolding, tease and deny, and force by, as well as impact, knife play, and anything that makes the flesh sing. Please welcome pronouns she, her, Mistress Tomie. Welcome, Mistress Tomie. How are you?
Hi, I'm great. It's so good to be here.
All right. So no one has said there's any audio issues yet, so we'll just kind of continue with that. Well, I know you've seen a bunch of our interviews. So our first question, anytime we have a new Dom on, is your origin story. We always like to hear, how did you become, basically, what was your journey to get you to the place you are now in becoming a pro-dominatrix?
Right, okay. Well, the story I like to start with is actually way back in my childhood when I was still in Taiwan. I have a very vivid memory of my first sort of like sexual experience or turn on, and it was a scene in The Matrix where the little metal bug was trying to like go into his belly button, and he's kind of screaming. He's strapped on like the table or the chair, whatever he was on. And I remember being really turned on by that. And as someone who like grew up in a pretty like conservative Christian household, I didn't really explore BDSM, but always had an inclination toward female-led relationships and being more dominant in relationships. And in college, I started exploring the BDSM scene in Chicago, and talking to people online about it. Joined FetLife, and once I moved to New York, I kind of just dove headfirst into the pro-dom scene and building my skills and meeting people and the wonderful community here.
Yeah, so you're obviously, congratulations on getting to your year anniversary. That's always a big one as a
Thank you.
pro-dominatrix. So I want to ask a little bit about your past. So you came from a conservative Christian family and also being Asian. Can I ask you what your Asian background is specifically?
Yeah, I'm Taiwanese.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a lot of similarities with Asian cultures tend to be conservative, not talking about sex. And then on top of that, there's a lot of religion that can happen. There's a lot of Catholics, Christians, and different Asian communities. So how was that growing up for you in regards to your sexuality?
Well, it's had an interesting impact on me. I think it accentuated a lot of my desires once I actually did start exploring my sexuality a little bit more. Yeah, so things like chastity and tease and denial, I think, is really deeply rooted in the fact that in some really key periods of when I was going through puberty, I wasn't allowed to because I thought Jesus was watching, right? So just the very act of like holding it in and trying to not touch yourself and not come, it turned into a turn on for me. Yeah, and the idea of having a all-powerful figure in your life that controls everything, sees everything, that makes you feel safe in some way, but also terrified, I think fed a lot into my Dom persona and who I am today.
I love that. That kind of, you're like, God's not watching you, but I am.
Exactly. Yeah, this is why I love digital surveillance. We can make that happen now.
So, so you kind of eroticize your religious upbringing.
Yes. Yeah, very much so.
So beyond just eroticizing it, do you feel like, was this a hard journey for you to get into, knowing that like there was all these stories given to you around like this was bad, you shouldn't do this? Or like, how did you overcome that part of it?
I think the version of Christianity that was taught to me was a very small niche in sort of like the large, like grand scheme of like theology. I ended up studying theology for 4 years in college and being pretty invested in it. And I think the more you learn about it, and I dove into philosophy and theology and read up on. I think like systematic theology was like really good for me to learn. You like slowly realize that there isn't a lot of answers, but rather better questions that you can ask about yourself and about the world that we live in and whatever deities that may exist. So deconstructing some of those narratives through through academia was really helpful. And then once I went through that, it was a lot easier to do the physical. So once my mind was prepped, my body kind of followed.
Oh, that's interesting. So you started to question your own sexuality, your own interests, the things that were told to be right or wrong.
Yeah, it got more complicated. It's just life, yeah.
Yeah. So then in regards to like BDSM, so you said your start was this, like what came natural to you was like a female-led relationship and kind of dominant. How did that look like in your past?
I think I got a lot of it from my mom, actually. She's a very strong woman, sometimes to a fault, I think. And she's always taken the lead, especially when we immigrated to the US. She really powered through learning English by piecing together words from like my first grade newsletters and just worked so hard, and seeing her do that. Whereas my dad sort of became like the house husband for the early years of my childhood, I think influenced me a lot.
Yeah, so seeing her and seeing how, so when was your formal understanding with BDSM? Like, how did that come about? How were you introduced, I guess?
Formal understanding. My first partner, he was interested in bondage and rope and stuff. He never really dabbled in it. He sort of just was interested in BDSM as a concept. He introduced me to like this world in a very like small way. And once I moved to Chicago, I met a few friends in the college I was in who, helped me buy my first rope and some of my first toys, told me about FetLife, and encouraged me to learn about this world. And at the time, I was on Tumblr and some like anonymous chat groups talking to. I remember like a trans woman in Dubai who was telling me about like the Dubai scene, and just I was so fascinated by everything and wanting to learn like absolutely everything I can and just soak up all the information.
So you're just like really, so your friends in Chicago were really like, you're introduced by this guy, but your friends in Chicago were the ones who were like,
Mm-hmm.
here's all these things. Like, what brought that about where they're like, hey, you should learn about this stuff? Like, those are kind of unusual conversations to have. So what was going on where you guys were having such open conversations to be able to talk about this stuff?
Yeah, I was going through a little bit of like a rough time during my college years, right? There was a lot of identity crises happening with deconstructing my religion, right? It was such a core part of my identity. And it's my first time being away from family, my first time, exploring my body and intellectually. The group of friends I had were sort of like a rebellious group that existed in college. And I think the conversation just naturally came up. One of them I know was very into like Tumblr culture, and he was making like furry porn at the time. And I remember being sort of like we still talk right now. Actually, I told him that I was a pro-dom now. He's like so proud, and I was just like, oh, you make like your own furry porn and you post it and people like it. And yeah, that was for the start. But in terms of like very formal education, I when I started Pro-Domme, I spent like 3 or 4 months researching and decided to start at the Taylor group in Bushwick.
Mm-hmm.
And at the Taylors, I would shadow different DOMs and just see the kind of experience they had, the style. I took a lot of online classes. I watched a lot of these periscopes, read a lot of books. Joined the Red Key Club when that started. There's like the Wicked Collective. I'm also part of that Slack chat group. And yeah, just getting little bits of information from everywhere and molding it with my personality.
Yeah, I mean, that's great that you're doing. Like, I think a lot of people don't realize how much kind of work and effort does take to learn all these things, because this is not an arena that has formal education. It's not a, I'm going to go for this 4-year degree and it's laid out and I take this class, then I take this class, and then I take this. You sort of have to put it together, put a curriculum together for yourself.
Yeah, exactly. It felt like mishmashing just information from everywhere and trying to discern who I am at the time, and also what kind of skill sets I want to really build out. So I'm really grateful for sex worker communities and BDSM communities and education platforms like this, because I think I would be just fumbling through without sort of all my predecessors creating these spaces.
So, so what made the decision? Because you were exploring kink and BDSM, but for so many people, you explore it, it's part of your sexuality maybe, but not everyone goes, hey, I'm going to take this thing that I'm doing that I'm interested in and make it into a career, make it into a job. Do you remember that defining moment for you?
Let me think. I do have a specific moment. It has to do with some stuff that happened at work, though. So I can't talk about it on this interview. But I think it was a realization that I've been performing a lot of emotional labor and feminized labor for free, and it was taking up a lot of my time. and a lot of my energy, and the boundary that I set for myself to protect my time and energy and to protect what I was giving to people is the financial line. It really helps weed out the kind of subs who are really interested in supporting my life and investing in my life. It weeds out a lot of subs who expect feminized labor to be free labor, not just sex work, but all kinds of housework, all kinds of pseudo therapy sessions you have with your male friends because they have no one else to talk to, and I think it helped me bring a circle of subs and people and clients into my closer circles without giving away that too freely.
Yeah, that makes sense. That really does. So how does, since you are, you've just passed your first year, what do you see your domination work looking like? What are you hoping, what are you enjoying now? What are you hoping to cultivate? What is this for you?
I'm still exploring. It's been a very surprising year with COVID, right? I never expected to go online for one. I was always going to be, when I started off, I was like, in person is what I want to do, right? The online space is not for me. And since COVID happened, I had to move online pretty rapidly. I'm on Sex Panther now, Night Flirt, trying really hard to make AVN work for me. And building out a whole new set of skills. I see myself doing this for the next decade at least. When I committed to this, I really wanted to see myself grow in this industry. Where am I going to go? I don't know. I changed a lot this year. I started off as a very hard sadist, and now I'm sensual domination, and everything along those lines have been just excellent, and I have so much fun with it. Anything to do with cuckolding and chastity, tease and denial, and making men yearn you, but taking that away completely is where my headspace has been at recently. And a lot of my subs say that I go through different phases, and I'm pretty multifaceted and a little bit moody sometimes. And the kind of sessions I like to devise is I'm exploring myself and trying to explore the sub at the same time. So,
yeah, so you started off as a hardcore sadist. In what way? And then how did that morph into the sensual, like you mentioned?
Yeah. So when I started, I was still exploring the idea of reincarnation through the flesh, and sort of what it means to break down a person's mind through their body. As the body breaks, the mind breaks with it, from what I've seen and experienced. And I was just doing a lot of impact sessions, very, very heavy impact sessions. A lot of sessions that would, bruise and welt and cause a lot of physical pain. Like wax was very fun for a little bit. I like knife play and blood play along with that. And I think as I explored the physical, my own sort of body and sexuality became more and more involved. And the satisfaction I got from doing heavy impact ended up morphing into a kind of sexual control that I can have over men. And that's where I'm at right now. It's very sort of centered on the flesh still.
Got it. what have you learned in this year about your work and about yourself?
Oh my God. I mean, I
What are some
can. Some
key
key ones? Oh man. I can spot a bad sub from a mile away now. It's just, you can feel it from the way they're typing, like their emails. That was a really good skill for me to learn. It saved me so much time. Let's see. Moving online a lot. I ran like a one trial period of a dungeon to see if that was feasible for me, and it was very intensive. And we broke even, but when the 1 month trial was up, I was like, I'm not renewing the lease for this. Props to everyone else who is running dungeons right now, but this is a lot of work. I've negotiating boundaries with various different types of subs, and the kind of language that they use around their desires and like what's implicit and explicit was really important. I've gotten a lot better at sexting too since going on Sex Panther. A lot better at digital domination since COVID has started, which I wasn't expecting at all. Time management is another huge one. Juggling this plus, a day job and side projects that I have, and finding subs that are like that fit into my life. That's like the key thing. Subs that fit into my life.
So what do you look for in a sub? I think a lot of people would love to hear that. What do you look for?
I started off being really interested in like omnipresence and omnipotence. So when I started off my pro-domming, I really liked TPE contracts, digital surveillance, like a whole 9 yard. And that got very exhausting very fast. I'm actually right now, I like subs who are hardworking, kind, generous, and actively submissive, right? I don't do very well with brats, and I also don't enjoy passive submission in the sense that they kind of just lie there and they say do whatever to me. I'm happy with whatever you do to me. I enjoy reaction and enthusiastic consent into whatever I'm doing toward them.
Yeah. So right now, obviously, everything has been online, so that's kind of shifted things for many people. And as a new dom, kind of not expecting, obviously, that to happen, what are you hoping to happen in the next year when hopefully the vaccine comes and maybe get a semblance of like, I don't want to say normalcy because what defines normalcy, but, non-pandemic, let's just say that. Well, what are you hoping for in a non-pandemic world with your play now that you've had a taste of online and stuff like that?
I know there's so many dungeons closing down right now, and it's really hard to see. I'm trying to take it optimistically and see it as this is a chance for a lot of younger doms to really strike out in the in-person play spaces, right? It's a new sort of time for doms who may not have had a chance before to give that a try and try to build that up. In terms of in-person play, I can't wait until travel is possible again. I had so many plans to travel, and there's a lot of like international subs that I want to see in East Asia specifically, and it just bums me out that I can't do that right now. Yeah, everything from little things like having a sub come to do my laundry has been difficult, right? Like now they have to get COVID checked, and I have to get COVID checked, and it's a whole process, and I can't wait until the spontaneity of play parties and of like subs that you meet at kink spaces and that kind of like organic chemistry that emerges in in-person spaces happens again.
Yeah, I think that's the travel and just interaction is what everyone is craving.
Yeah, it's true.
What's your travel plans? Where are you hoping to go and start with?
So I can speak Mandarin. So I was hoping to, go back to Taiwan and branch off and, visit South Korea and Japan too. I've been talking to one sub who is located in China, and I've never actually been to China before, so I would be really interested in finding out what that scene looks like.
Yeah. I kind of want to ask you just, being an Asian Dom, this question comes up a lot. How do you find your Asianness interacts with your domination?
That's a hard question. Could you specify maybe a little bit more about what you're looking for?
Well, just like the idea that, yellow fever, Asian fetish, we have these terms within our world that's thrown around that really affect Asian doms. You don't hear it so much of people saying, "Oh, I have you don't hear I have a white dom fetish," right? I'm not saying that, obviously there are many white doms, but we get sort of objectified in this way through the word fetish, Asian fetish, yellow fever, all of that. And how do you find that has worked into your own, like within like what you're getting from requests from clients, and then your feelings around that? Like, has anybody ever been like, "Oh, I want you to dominate me in Mandarin," and they're not Mandarin speaking, they're maybe a white guy asking you to dominate them in Mandarin. Like, I don't know if any of those interactions have happened, but if they have, like, what are your thoughts, feelings on all of that? And, what has been your experience?
Yeah. I mean, Asian fetishization is a problem. And I think it's difficult when the entirety of my night job is to, basically be a like sexual fantasy in some regard. I think when I started off at the tailors, so the primary demographic for the clients of the tailors are walk-ins, right? So they would call pretty spontaneously and come in based on like what they're looking for that night. I had a lot more of that kind of instance happen when I was at tailors. Once COVID started, I was harassed. I was called like the Chinese virus. My clientele went down during that time. During the elections, sort of in the weeks leading up to it, I also got like racist emails based on, who I am. So I think we're like stuck in this, as like an Asian dom, I'm stuck in this place between being like objectified as a sexual object and being like non-human almost, right? As a Asian person in the US, and all of this like anti-Chinese, and I'm not even Chinese, right? I'm Taiwanese, all this like anti-Chinese language that has been floating around.
Yeah.
I don't know if there's a solution to it other than like being involved in political organizing and trying to change the landscape on a bigger scale. And that's where I like to direct my energy into. And I also understand that like the kind of harassment I'm getting is nothing compared to, say, like massage parlor workers who get raided by the police, right, and get deported. Like that's state violence, and the kind of violence that I'm experiencing is just like a smaller branch of that, and I'm fairly lucky financially to be able to exploit it in a way. I don't. I know that that's not, correct, and I think I'm still figuring out how I'm supposed to move forward, trying to navigate these complexities. But what I will say is, if I have a white client who is genuine about being a good sub for me, he will make the effort to educate himself about how to serve me. And part of that is to educate himself about how to not just like confront his own identity as like a white male, but also be an ally, be a white ally and be actively anti-racist, not just like observant of it or passive about what's happening. I think that's real service. That's real submission, and I think that's real power too, right? We're literally fighting against like white supremacy. Like that's real power.
Yeah. I think that was a very thoughtful answer. Thank you. Before I open it up to questions, I wanted to know, and I want to know, like, what do you, this is a difficult question around kind of BDSM philosophies, right? Like, over time, everyone develops their own kind of philosophy, how they play, their ideas around BDSM. I wanted to know whether you have any thoughts around that, around your own philosophy around kink and BDSM, and how you interact with it.
Mm-hmm. I've changed so much in this year, and I'm not a static individual. So when I started off, my philosophy around it was really centered around sort of dealing with my religious past and figuring out how to be that like omnipresent and omnipotent person in a sub's life and take the vacuum that like God used to be in my life and is now not there, and trying to be that person. And right now, I think I'm still figuring it out. Yeah, I think I would be lying if I just made up something right now.
No, thank you for your honest answer. I do want to open this up to questions for anybody out there. If you have questions, feel free to ask them. Make sure they're respectful and pertain to this interview. But I think this is a question is not directed to you specifically, but in general, and I would love for you to answer this, though, which is, how do submissive men introduce themselves properly? I think this is a good question in general for people to hear how to go about this. So for you, how would a submissive man introduce themselves properly for you?
Don't DM me on Twitter, don't DM me don't text me on Skype, don't text me anywhere. Go on my website, fill out an intake form, and give me all the information that I very specifically asked for. That's the best way to introduce yourself. Every other form is either ignored, or I will make a note that I will not respond. Yeah.
That's good. So out there, we get this question often, and I find the response to be the same thing. Proper avenues. If you want to reach out to a professional dominatrix, we make it very easy. super easy. There are proper avenues and they're very clear. So someone said, okay, hello. So does heavy impact play still interest you as much as it used to?
Absolutely. I love heavy impact sessions. Since I've started, though, I've had a number of subs who come to me who is interested in that and then call yellow or red very early. So when you come to me about heavy impact sessions, make sure that you are very clear about your limits and very clear about your experience when talking to me about it. But I love heavy impact. Absolutely.
So what are your favorite tools when it comes to heavy impact? This is just my personal question.
Mm-hmm. I actually really enjoy boxing. I've been, lifting weights and working out recently, and I have these like nice gloves, and I love just like really getting into the act of like boxing and kneeing and just like flesh on flesh. When I'm in another mood, though, I alternate between like various whips and keys. I use the least, but they're fun for like specific marks I want to make on a person.
Got it. Another great question coming out. How well, I think they mean, how does technology part of your play?
So it's a huge part. A huge part of my life now. I'm always on my phone. I'm always on my laptop. If we're talking about digital surveillance.
Yeah, I think that's what they're referring to.
Okay, yeah. So I have one sub on a TP contract, and he is digitally surveilled 24/7. So he has installed cameras in his house that I only have access to, and I've locked him out of the platform. Sometimes I use like what is it called, TV on your phone to look at their screens and sometimes FinDom them. I'm getting access to their social media passwords, their bank account passwords, using tracking devices so I know where they're going, how many steps they're taking, the kind of food they're eating, right? There's like calorie tracking apps so you can know exactly what's going in and out of their body, and just completely taking away privacy and kind of reducing them to a state of being a baby where like their mom is constantly watching them, right? Like baby monitoring them the whole time. So when I'm doing digital surveillance, I can't do it all the time. It's time constrained to a week or two at the most, and mainly because it takes away so much of my energy and attention from other things.
Yeah. So for those of you out there, that requires an exchange of a heavy amount of resources for that much time and energy to put into it. Because I feel like this fantasy has grown over the years, this full surveillance, total control, locked out, I think it's a really, really big fantasy for many people, but they also don't realize how much time and energy that requires from the dominant to do such a thing. And that the amount of time and energy that is required from us is expected to come back out in resources. So, hint, everyone out there, you have to be willing to pay for it.
Along those lines, right? I've done digital surveillance for a few subs at this point, a number of subs actually. Right, on their end, their act is handing over their password to Facebook. On my end, I'm trying to understand who they are to other people, right? How they talk to their mom versus how they talk to their brother versus like past lovers, and going through their pictures, private ones or not. And what I'm trying to do is understand them psychologically. On their end, they don't know that's happening. They just know they're terrified that I might type something, right, or blackmail them or anything along those lines. But it takes up a lot of time reading all your text messages, you know, all the boring ones too, like your grocery list on your notes that you haven't deleted for 5 years. I see them.
So it's something you don't like to engage in long term. It's more like these stints because they take so much time and energy.
Yeah, I do love it because I get to know them in a way that other people don't. Like, who do you hand your phone to just look through? You know, I feel like it feels more private to look through a person's phone now than to like have sex in a lot of ways. And yeah, like handing over your phone password to someone is a huge act. So I love it. But I need to be interested in you as a person also. I won't do it if I don't think we have good chemistry because I won't be interested in getting to know you that deeply if we don't have good chemistry.
Yeah, I have my feelings of that because I have like so much else going on. I'm always like, there needs to be like a big exchange for me because at that point, like to do that amount of work because it's so much mental work, it's so much time and energy, like it has to be worth it, you know?
Yeah. Um, Digital surveillance was the reason why I didn't go under when COVID started, right? I lost a bunch of clients, and there was also like this onslaught of, you know, racist harassment. But in exchange, what I had was a lot of free time for the few subs I really wanted to do digital surveillance, and when everyone was quarantined, that was the way I was able to get out of the house and be in another space. It was through technology.
Oh, that's cool. Someone asked, I mean, I think we already answered this, but it obviously is a play with it. You did talk more about your style of digital domination and then just favorite modalities, which I guess you've kind of answered, but I don't know if there's anything else you want to add to that.
Mm, I think I talked a little bit about that already. I'm not quite sure what you mean by modalities. Is it like ways I modify this play or?
Um, I guess we can have someone clarify, but maybe like how you do it. It seems like phone and taking over their social media and like their passcodes and stuff like that is, and just checking all of those things out for each. So if there is another part to this question, Miss Patrick, please let us know. But I think we actually, I think you actually answered that within, from the other question.
I can talk a little bit more about how it's slanted. So
Okay.
if I have a sub who's like more into fin doming, I would, you know, spend more time looking at their retirement plans and checking their credit card balance and seeing where they're spending their money. And, you know, maybe putting them on a debt contract according to what I see. If there's a sub who is really interested in like girlfriend experience fantasy where I'm a very controlling and abusive girlfriend, I would be on their social media more, right? And or their dating apps more and blocking them from, you know, I don't know, models that they follow or people they're talking to on Tinder. So it gets slanted a little bit according to like the different psyches of each sub, and it's very specific for everyone.
Yeah, that's awesome. Someone asked, you mentioned cuckolding was an interest. How did you get introduced to cuckolding?
Oh, this is so funny. I was thinking about this recently. I I think I just naturally enjoyed it when I was young. So when I grew up watching K-dramas, I just loved the jealousy scenes, you know, when there's the love triangle and like one person is just like hopelessly in love and can't get the girl. Like in K-dramas, I just loved it. It like gave me the tingles when I was like 12. Like one of my favorite music videos was Taeyang's like wedding dress, where the big reveal was that he's actually not the girl's boyfriend. He's he's a guy's best friend, and he's forced to well, he's not forced, but he's like sadly playing the piano on their wedding day, right? And that was the whole thing. So I really I think I just naturally enjoyed it for some reason. I'm not quite sure why, but once I got to college and I started reading more hentai, I read a lot of cuckolding hentai and knew this was for me.
There's a lot of cuckolding in Asian media, in anime, in manga, in like dramas, like K-dramas, Asian dramas, like, you know, Chinese films. Like I grew up in a lot of that stuff. And there is like a lot of that unrequited like love.
Mm-hmm.
You love someone so much, but they love someone else, but you're just going to be so loyal to them. There's a lot of that.
Yeah.
I actually, even part of that, like one of them, I actually just finished a semi-newer K-drama called Startup. I don't know if you've seen it, and it's on Netflix.
It's been heavily recommended to me by the algorithm.
Yeah. So there is a little bit of that. Two men who are kind of in love with one woman, and you don't know who's going to end up, but they all just want to like be there for her and do all these things for her and all this stuff. So there's definitely like a feel to it.
Mm-hmm.
Next question is, what do you find to be the most rewarding aspect of being a Dom?
I think being a Dom fulfills a like deep sexual and existential need in me. So there's that. But practically, I love that my life is easier when I have good subs around. Like for example, this mask, I didn't have time to go out and grab it, so a sub, went out and got it for me and dropped it off, and that saved me like 3 hours of traveling time, and I didn't have time to do research on what mask is available yesterday. So another amazing sub did the research for me last night, and I love it when my life is just a lot easier. And I'm being served and pampered, and it's the happiest I've been.
That's awesome. I'm going to put this question up, but more to talk about this fantasy, just because it's a big fantasy, and it has to be talked about in a more practical way, I think. So someone asked, you talked about blackmail. Do you ever go far as actually ruining your sub's existing life?
Mm-hmm. No, I don't.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I can use that language a lot when we're in a scene or in a role play, but in terms of ruining a sub's life in the sense that like they will lose family and friends and not be able to live in a fulfilled way, I'm not interested in that at all. Yeah, at the end of the day, I do see you as human beings, and that's important. But what I do is I play in a space where that's controlled.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that's a great answer. I think this is an area that there's a big fantasy around blackmail, ruining, all of that. But again, it needs, this type of play, especially with pro-doms, are done in a very consensual way, in a safe way. I'm not saying there aren't people who exist out there who would do it and will go that far and stuff like that, but I don't think many of us want, it's a fantasy, no one wants to ruin somebody else's life officially, because there's so much that goes into that. And we're not just like evil people who don't give a fuck about who you are out there, So keep that in mind when you have this fantasy and think about this as a fantasy. And it's fun to enjoy. It's fun to, enjoy the blackmail ruining fantasy, and you can kind of, get into it, but realize where those limitations are, because trust me, if it actually happened, most of you out there would not be okay with it. So I tend to have to talk people off this blackmail ledge all the time, subs who are just like, no, do it and do it. And I'm like, no, you don't. Don't,
Yeah.
You don't really want that to happen. So, and there's also the trust, especially when you're doing like a digital domination, right? There's a trust that you're not going to, for the most part, you're not going to go posting anything on their social media that is going to cause a huge thing. But but it's fun to think about the possibility. Mm-hmm. And
I like holding that power, but when it actually happens, it has to be negotiated. Sort of, if I can talk as them, right, on their social media, if I'm allowed to post anything on their social media. But yeah, I think there are some subs out there who use blackmail as a form of self-harm, and I need to be very careful of that. And I'm not interested in participating in that. Very
true. Yeah, I agree. There are some out there that use it as a form of self-harm, and it's not something that many of us want to participate in. So hopefully that, gave some of you guys some information. So unless there's any other questions, I do want to point to the bottom of the screen here, all of it. I always forget this is like a weird mirror thing. So Tomie's website, Twitter, and AVN Stars. So please follow her, subscribe to her AVN Stars, and also how to reach out in the proper manners. Very simple. Look down. Before we end, was there anything that you wanted to promote, Tomie? Like anything you wanted to let people know about, any projects or anything else that you just want to do a shout out
on? I don't have anything at the moment, other than, once the vaccines roll out, I will be going back to doing a lot more in-person sessions than being online. Like, that's where my heart is at. So look out for that.
Awesome. And your travel schedule will be on your Twitter and website as well, I assume?
Yes.
Awesome. Cool. Well, I want to say, thank you, Tomie, for, being part of our show. Thank you for all of you who tuned in tonight. And remember to catch us every Monday, 7 p.m. Eastern Time, our live broadcast. And if you would like to support our weekly broadcast, as well as get some really cool membership rewards, please join us on our Patreon, which is down below. And this interview will also be posted on YouTube for forever watching. Have a good night, everyone.